storytelling. In this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week I speak with the third in our series of Denmark, WA, storytellers, Christina Cairns. We have a wide-ranging discussion from the creative process and imagination through to theatrical things and how the process of making a story and the philosophy of story. It was a wide-ranging conversation. And as it's Christmas time, it's the last interview for the year. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to this week's podcast. This week we are coming to you from Denmark in the Great Southern of Western Australia, and we're speaking with Christina Cairns. Welcome to the podcast.
Lovely to be here. Thanks, Ali.
I'd love to hear about your storytelling journey. Where did you start and what are you doing now?
Well, I guess it started about probably 50 years ago, but it's one of those incremental things that goes in steps. So obviously the sort of books that I was reading when I was a child, the Narnia books, and then the Hobbit, Susan Cooper's books were very, very influential. I discovered the Arthurian legends through her, actually, so I became very excited about those. And then I saw the film Excalibur and got very, very into Arthurian legends. And then I think one of the really, really important places in the storytelling aspect is when I was 16, I used to like folk music, and there was a folk music program I used to listen to quite often. It was a regular one. And I used to have my dad's big old double tape deck. And I always kept a tape in it just in case something really interesting came on that I might want to get a copy of. And the announcer said something along the lines of, next up we've got Robin Williamson with his musical poem, 5 Denials on Merlin's Grave. And I went, oh, Merlin, that's Arthurian. So I pressed record. And this incredible experience, it folded out of the speakers, and I didn't realise it was going to be 13 minutes long, and the tape finished halfway through, and so I was like scrabbling, trying to get the tape, turn it over, put it back on, press record again. So there was like about 10 seconds in the middle that I lost, and I listened to that tape over and over and over and over again, and I thought, that's what bards do. He's a bard. And so that was a start. And then years later, I was lucky enough to actually see him live in London. And he was on stage with a bunch of instruments, no costumes, no fancy lighting, nothing. And he just told stories, and he had the audience in the palm of his hand. And I'd never experienced anything like that. Oh my God, that's incredible. After that, I went and I studied theatre at Curtin University, so I got into that idea of performance, which I'd never thought about before, and so I got involved in theatre performances. And when I moved down to Denmark, I found a community here where I didn't have to be a professional at doing that sort of thing. I'd never really got involved with anything like that up in Perth, apart from a choir I used to sing with. But down here, there was things happening, and it was like I didn't have to have a CV. I didn't have to have a professional background. You could just leap in and do it. And so I started getting involved in the things here. And the storytelling thing, it's just evolved. I kind of out of that. I mean, as a visual artist, I think the first sort of thing I wrote a poem. It was a prompt. It was something to do. This was going back quite a few years. Beauty and the Beast, 20 years on, how did it turn out? And I wrote a poem, and then that poem became a painting. And then I thought, this is the end of the story. I need to tell the rest of the story. And so over several years, I developed this whole kind of show, performance thing, which was a retelling, sort of my retelling of the Beauty and the Beast myth, which I called the Wolf Bride. And so it was songs and poetry. And so I performed that down here at the Denmark Festival of Voice. and got such an amazing response. And I think I sort of felt for the first time, oh, this might be my thing, the thing that I do, that I'm good at. And so then, the other people that I know, like Sylvia and Jeff and various other people who are doing art stuff down here, we're woven in and out and done projects together. And so it's sort of evolved from there. So it's a long journey to get here.
I mean, I just have a couple of questions. I mean, what do you see a really strong connection between your visual arts and the stories that you do?
Yes, I do. I sort of always used to joke that I was looking for the perfect art form that would combine everything, because I'm interested in everything. So I'm interested in music, and I'm a jack of all trades, so I do lots of different things. And the idea of combining them all together has always been really, really powerful for me. And so the Wolf Bride, when I actually did it a second time, and I incorporated an art exhibition in with it. So yeah, that bringing all of those different threads together, I love that idea. The story, I think, the storytelling thing, I think fascinated me too, because having done theatre at uni, that there's costumes and there's a script and there's lighting and there's a set and everything, and that's wonderful and I love that. But one of the things I love about storytelling is that you can do that and hold an audience in your hand, and you don't need any of that stuff. You can incorporate some if you like, but you don't need it. And you and the audience create the thing together. They're seeing something in their heads, and every single one of them is seeing something different in their heads when they listen to your story. But they're also watching you and the gestures and the facial expressions and everything. So it's kind of like this incredible thing that you're creating all together, that none of you can do it by yourselves. You're a community creating something really special.
And I've spoken to Jeff and Sylvia about the community here. I mean, what's your I guess contribution or role in the community here with storytelling?
I'm a bit of an introvert. So I can stand up and tell stories and I can perform. I'm not so good on being out there and that sort of thing. I think one of the things I think about this community is that they are so incredibly supportive, that you can give something a go. And we have lots of people who are new storytellers trying things out, and they know that they can do that, and no one's going to tell them they didn't do a very good job or anything, because everyone loves to see someone having a go. But I think there is this real thirst for this kind of personal connection that isn't screens, it isn't streamed, it isn't recorded, it's right there live. It's a moment and you can't freeze it. And I think there's a real thirst for that in the world now. So I think what's happening down here is we surprisingly found there's a community who keep coming back for more and more and more. So, and that surprised us when we first started over a year ago. We thought we probably might end up with a hardcore group of about 15 who will come, and it's just not. They just keep coming. So it's been amazing, but there's obviously a real need for it. Yeah.
Why do you think there is a need for it?
I think, again, it's that kind of human connection thing. Watching a storyteller on YouTube does not give you anything the same as what watching a storyteller in person gives you. That person reacting off the facial expressions of the people in front of them, or reacting to the way someone else in the audience is reacting. You can't do that. And also I think that idea of creating it together, when you watch a film or television, you're kind of spoon-fed in a way. It's all been decided. All of the characters look the way the director wanted the characters to look, and the costumes, and so you're not contributing so much in terms of imagination. It's presented to you in a finished form, and you consume it, but you're not co-creating it. And I think that's a really interesting and important thing with the storytelling. You are co-creating it. You're seeing a movie in your head, but it's your movie, and it's not going to be like anyone else's. And I think that's really powerful and really important to nurture that ability to visualize and to imagine, because imagination is enormously important for humans.
It's one of the things that comes up quite often in conversations with storytellers, is this need for us to have imagination, or to foster and nurture imagination, because look where our current trajectory of imagination has led us. It's led us into a pretty, well, I sort of thought about it as a bit like the Titanic. We're on the Titanic and it's going down, and I feel like a bit of one of the musicians playing as the Titanic sinking. Bringing it all together. So the imagination is really, really important part of the storytelling, but also, like you said, the reactivity. You are reacting to, because it is a co-creation between people.
And I think that one of the wonderful things that I love about theatre as well, which it has the same kind of ability, is that presenting an idea, or like I'm trying to think of a good example. Just imagine, there's the story has a woman holding a baby in it. That in the film of this story, there would be a woman holding a real baby. In the theatre production or in the storytelling, there's no real baby. There's a way you hold your arms, a way you look at the space in your arms, and the audience puts the baby there. And because the audience puts the baby there, I think it's much more powerful than if you had a prop, because the audience puts a real baby there, maybe a baby they know. And it becomes much more personal, much more powerful than just a prop that isn't real. And I think that's really, really important. It is that sense of bringing yourself to the story, which makes it so much more powerful.
Lovely. If we can go back to your Beauty and the Beast thing, what was your process? Why that story, and what was your process in developing that show?
I think that story, there's something about that story, and I look back at a lot of the stories that I've sort of like written or half written or done things with. There's something about that story that appeals to me, or I guess my idea of that story. I mean, when I was at uni, I wrote and directed a short one-act play which was based on The Tempest. But I kind of turned it on its head, because in The Tempest, you kind of get Prospero's story. He's basically controlling everything. Everything that happens he knows about, or he's actually making it happen. And with the character of Miranda, his daughter, I always thought that you don't hear her voice. You don't really know how she feels about all this. I mean, she's grown up on this island. She's probably had the run of the island, been fairly free. Her father has educated. I mean, he actually says he's educated her incredibly well, much better than most girls her age would be educated. But then suddenly, in the blink of an eye, he decides to cause a shipwreck, bring this prince in, get her married off to a prince, and I thought, how would she feel about that? And then I had also the idea of the character of Caliban. So the idea of the beast. Maybe he wasn't really a beast. Maybe Prospero saw him as a beast, but maybe Miranda didn't. Maybe they grew up together. Maybe they were friends. Maybe they become lovers. So I was playing with that idea of, who's the real beast? And so when I started working on the Beauty and the Beast, the Wolf Bride story, it was that sort of idea of who is the real beast. The kind of a sense of the masculine that has perhaps been pushed aside for the more aggressive, dominant kind of masculine, it's hard to articulate, but it's this. I feel like I keep going back to this same story because there's something that's really important for me. That maybe there's a different possibility, and that the thing we think is the beast maybe isn't the real beast. So that was the idea.
I'm interested in this idea of there's something in the story for me. What can you talk more about that?
I think it's one of those interesting things about the storytelling thing, that often you hear a story, and something about it niggles you. You can't put your finger on it. It just bugs you. And it might take weeks or months or maybe even years before you sort of go, oh, I get it. You understand what that story's been trying to tell you, that there is something in that story that's important information for you to know about your own self-development or your own situation. I don't know whether that's still that story. And I think also there's the idea of transformation. I things like the story of the children of Lear, like the swan story that you told the other night, painting up there, which sort of reflects that. That idea of the human-animal connection, again, back to, who is the beast here, and our disconnection from nature. I think all of that feeds into these things that those stories that niggle me, and I sort of keep coming back to them.
So in a way, the stories are teaching us about ourselves.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it might take a long time to learn it, but I think that they have that incredible power. I think a lot of the stories that we know now, I mean, I've read that they're sort of like, what do you call them, story anthropologist type people have traced some of these stories back thousands of years. And you think, well, if we keep telling these stories, same basic principles of the story, even if the details change, there must be something that's important in them. We wouldn't keep telling them. Why does the Arthurian cycle have such kind of power for us that we keep telling it, even when we tell it in the version of like Star Wars, which is essentially the same story really in many ways? We keep telling these myths, so they must have some kind of really important information, something to tell us, something that's important for us to remember.
So what sort of stories do you like to tell?
I do love legends, myths, fairy tales. I've always been interested in that kind of otherworldly sort of myths, legends, magic, and the folk tales. I guess I have a particular interest in the ones from my ancestry, which would be the UK stories, so Scottish, Irish, Welsh, English, but also sort of Europe and into the Middle East. I've been fascinated by all of those stories, and I see connections between them, and I'm fascinated by the way that, one of the things I really find fascinating is the way stories, like music, like culture, like art, it travels. Doesn't tend to have hard and fast borders around it. I think we tend to put hard and fast borders around things but it's kind of a false thing, in like creating nation states. It's like people have always moved. People have always taken their stories with them. They've taken their music with them. They share it. They swap. And so these stories, the story that might have got sort of set in concrete, so to speak, in one country because that's when it got written down, may not have started there. It may have started a long way away, and it may have spread in different directions, which is why we quite often get the same. You go, oh, this sounds very much like this other story that I've heard from a completely different culture. So I think they can actually bring us together, sort of to sort of say, well, you can't say that story. I think there is a danger that you're actually cutting off the bridges that could build harmony between us. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Did I answer your question?
No, I mean, I think I'm quite interested in this, and particularly the movement of languages and how language originated. And, I saw a good article about Indigenous languages arriving in the Northern Territory, and it was fairly set for a long time. But what they're saying now is that all Indigenous languages, apart from Tasmania and the Tiwi Islands, have the same origin because Tasmania was cut off for about 15,000 years. The language then turned into something else. So the way all of our languages in some way have some similar roots because humans started to communicate, about the same time. So there's this really, and I really like that idea of the borders around stories and culture particularly being a false border.
Yeah, I mean, they're fluid. I think that's the thing, they're fluid. I mean, as a non-Indigenous Australian, I'm very, very aware that what Indigenous people here, they have this, what's been hammered into the ground by colonisation, and they are trying to rescue it, and they've got this incredibly fragile thing they're holding close to their heart, and they have to work to repair it, and it's not my place as a non-Indigenous person to have a say about that or to anything. So that is, maybe one day that will come in the future, but they have to hold that close and rebuild that. But I think there's a lot of stories that they've been told all around the world and swapped between people. I think it's a bit like musicians. If you get musicians from different countries and cultures together, they've all got a different sort of repertoire of music. They've all got different instruments. Even if they don't speak the same language, they will get together and jam. They will swap instruments. They will swap music, tunes, and they will all go away with something a little bit extra added to what they came with. And I think that's an incredibly beautiful thing. That is what brings us together.
And the sharing of ideas, the sharing of stories,
Absolutely.
the sharing of music.
Well, that's the thing. Sharing of, I mean,
Sharing.
that's how humans develop, because we share ideas. So yeah,
It's a lovely concept, the idea of us all sharing. Well, this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. I'd love to hear what you think is at the heart of storytelling in the oral tradition.
I think it is that sharing. I think it's that it's a cohesive force in a culture. I mean, I wrote a story a few years back about just like a made-up idea about an ancient storyteller, that her role was to fill the bellies of her tribe or whatever, even when there was no food, that her stories could fill that kind of hole. They could fill their hearts and keep the group together even through the hardest of times. And that's what her role was, to remind them who they are, to remind them of all the information that they have, to pass on that information to the next generation. So I think they are that really incredible cohesive force within a culture, which of course means that, you know, sometimes there are bad stories that can be used like that as well. So you know, it's, I guess they can be either way. So I think that's probably why we really need positive stories now.
Yeah, and which is my next question. Why do you think we need the oral tradition today?
I guess, you know, there is something real about it that you can hold on to. It's not just constant noise, and it's, you know, person to person. So it's not someone off somewhere else that you've never met telling you something that you don't know whether it's true or not. That I think when you actually interact with a person, and stories also, like, it's one way that you get to know people. I think one of the ways that we dehumanize people is that we don't let them tell their story, or we tell a story about them that's not their story. And I think one of the really important and powerful things is to listen to someone else's story. I mean, not necessarily folk tales or whatever, but just their story, their life. Because then that's when you go, oh yeah, that happened to me too, or oh, I know how you feel. And then suddenly you realise you've got so much in common. I think that's one of the things that, the barricades are put for a purpose, in order to stop people from hearing someone else's story, so you can continue to make them that other thing that I don't have anything common with. So I think they have that really powerful ability, again, to build bridges, bring people together.
Do you tell personal stories?
It's an interesting question. I suppose when I tell a story, when I tell a folk tale or a legend, there's always me in it. I think it's important. I think it's impossible not to. A lot of the stories that you use in folk tales and legends, that you get kind of a skeleton of a story, and so if you just tell that, it's a bit lifeless. You've got to put the flesh on the story, and so inevitably you are going to bring yourself and your experiences and your feelings to the story. So I think that the skeleton remains, but each person who tells the story brings themselves to it, perhaps even more than they realise. So I guess in that way I do tell personal stories. I have done a couple of shows where there was much more of me in them, still using mythology and folk tales and things like that as a kind of a structure, but much more of me in them. So.
And I guess in the choice of stories that we select, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of stories. The stories that we choose are a reflection of our self or our values or the deep philosophical questions we're exploring. You know, a lot of the choice that we make or the stories that come to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. That's one of those things where you sort of go, you know, a story that you read and it just, for some reason, that's the one you're drawn to. There's probably a reason. So.
Yeah. Well, one of my things that I'm experimenting with is putting YouTube videos up, not necessarily for performative, but to get these stories back out in the world. Because they've been forgotten. And I think if someone can take those stories and then add their own magic to them, I think those stories can have a new life.
I think that's actually really important. It's one of those things that talking about, you know, because we tell stories from different cultures down here, and that sometimes you need to hear someone else's story, but they can't tell you. And I think a story told imperfectly is better than a story lost. I used to, years ago, I used to sing in a group that sang Scottish Gaelic songs, and that's my ancestry, but I can't speak Gaelic, so we would learn the songs phonetically, and I don't know how good our pronunciation was. But I sort of, you know, I sometimes felt, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I murdering these words? You know, is this a good idea? You know, what if I wanted to teach these songs to my daughters? You know, am I going to teach them these kind of like murdered versions because I've completely destroyed the pronunciation? And I thought, well, if the song survives in some form, even if it's not perfect, that's better than it dying. And I think that's really important.
I heard a really cool anecdote. I feel like I need to share it with you because we both share Scottish ancestry. And I can't remember if it was Scotland or Ireland, but there was this really famous song played on violin in the Celtic countries. And it's been passed down and down and down. And one day this woman heard the song because the man who originally penned the song was out in the fog and heard this sound.
The whales?
The whales. You know this story. Yes. So just for the benefit of people on here, he was out and he heard this sound and he turned it into a song, and then the whale scientist realised that it was a whale song. And I think that is
it's like
the
150 years ago, guy thought he had heard fairies or selkies or something singing. And then, just recently the scientists realised that he was out in a coracle or a currach, which is like a skin boat. And it would have resonated with the sound of the whale singing. And so that's what he...
I know, it's just the most glorious story ever.
Wonderful story. Wonderful story.
I feel like it's... but that's the thing for me. It started as whale song, turned into song, and then there's probably myth and things around it. But that's what we do. It has this origin somewhere, and we make meaning of it in our own way, or we add it to make it into more beautiful things, or interpret it in our own way.
One of the things that I also love about that too is, for me, it's like I've now heard that they think it was probably whale song. That does not, for me, in any way diminish the idea that it's also the selkies, that it was this magical sound, because for me, they all of those ideas completely coexist happily. It is not necessarily one thing or the other. It can be everything. And I think that's wonderful. It doesn't have, you don't have to go, oh, it's only that thing. It can be everything. It can hold all those beautiful ideas, which maybe seem a little bit contradictory, but you know, hey, they go together beautifully. I think a slightly beautiful mess. Doesn't matter.
Well, it's a bit like the single-celled organism, isn't it? You know, this origin of life is a single-cell organism, but look at the complex nature of life. You know, it doesn't have to be this one single thing, and I think that's what we we probably all
Yeah.
are, is this conglomeration
Yeah.
of ideas and values and stories and songs and
Yeah.
bloodline and trauma and all of the things.
All of those things. And sometimes they don't sit together very well.
Yeah.
And so we're it's like a juggling act, I think, sometimes trying to make all of these things fit. And I think maybe if we just realise they don't necessarily have to fit neatly. Just as long as you kind of hold it together and you go, yeah, that's me. I'm a bit messy. Things don't quite fit. It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we're constantly trying to present this perfect facade. But most of us are actually just this bundle of contradictions that are, all, as you say, the all of our experiences, all of our damage, all of our everything. And I guess that's why when a story gets in, it finds a little chink in your armour and it does something to whatever your experiences are, which are completely different to someone else's experiences are, and the story does, it does its magic.
So where do you see your storytelling going? What are you hoping that will happen, or are you happy with where you are?
I don't know. I would like to, I think, get back to doing another long form show. I mean, it's interesting that when I did The Wolf Bride, that was a scripted show. I wouldn't necessarily call that a storytelling thing, because the storytelling is much more kind of organic. You don't learn it off by heart, and that was a scripted thing. But I would like to go back to that. I think COVID really kind of stuff things up. I think I know a lot of artistic, creative people really felt kind of like sunk in a hole somehow. And in some ways I'm still kind of trying to get out of that. A lot going on in the world, which of course, you're always kind of got your antennas out, and it's sometimes hard to ignore that. But yeah, I want to continue with the storytelling group, because one of the joys is just seeing someone give it a go who've never done it before, and just seeing, the look on their face when everyone applauds at the end. It's like, oh my God, I can do it. And we've had some incredible storytellers just come up and you go, where did you come from? Where have you been hiding? And I think that's incredibly valuable, and our community clearly wants us to continue. So that, and that possibly a longer form show. I have ideas that have been floating around. I tend to take a very long time to percolate ideas, because I love the collecting part of the story, so I can do that forever, and I can bring in all sorts of things that probably don't really belong, but I see a connection. And then, of course, you have to go, right, okay, that bit's got to go, and that bit's got to go, and that bit's got to go. I've got to narrow this down, and I hate doing that. So that's always painful.
I do love the idea of your art exhibition, though. I think that's pretty special. But I do want to say, with a lot of the different art forms, there's a culture of critique with, visual art or drama, and storytelling doesn't seem to have that level of critique apart from in the United States, where it's competition. But there's this level of real acceptance that someone's standing up and having a go.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
It's lovely.
It's like it hasn't kind of been commercialized to a certain extent. I think that's what's good, and if you hang on to that. I mean, I think one of the things I find really sad was I hear people say, "Oh, I don't have an artistic bone in my body," because I think that's something we do get knocked out of us as kids. I was lucky. I came from a family where my mum was an artist, my grandmother was an artist, so it was kind of just normal. So I continued doing it. But yeah, I think it's so incredibly important. And the other thing I think is really important, which adults tend to forget, is play. The ability to play. That's how you come up with ideas. That's how you come up with the ideas that you wouldn't normally come up with. Unless you just go, okay, I'm just going to be silly and I'm going to try throw things together and see what happens. And I think that's incredibly valuable.
It certainly is. Do you have any, you talked about when people get up on stage for the first time, that's a pretty special moment. Are there any other special moments that you've had in your time?
Sometimes having music, I always love. When we've had people come and you're doing a Scottish night, or can we do a song? It's like so and it's fantastic. So we've just had some of the most amazing music. We had a full harp was a quartet or quintet, I don't know, of harps for the Scottish Knights playing Scottish songs. And I was like, I don't know where all these people came from. And I think that's really, really beautiful. I think music really adds a really, really powerful added extra element. So
and you said you used music in your wolf?
Well, the Wolf Bride was it was like a series of 10 songs. The narration was kind of third person, and it was sort of accidentally sort of poetic. I didn't really mean to write it like that, but then it started to become like that. And the songs were all from the beauty's point of view, so it was telling her story. And I did another one called Tree Song, which was basically me going, okay, oh God, it was so incredibly rambling and so many different ideas, but it was basically what trees mean to us. So I went into science, I went to mythology, I went into personal stories and anecdotes, and I had some original songs, and I also had quite a few snippets of folk songs and other songs in there as well. So, and I think it really does give an added emotional feeling to the performance. It really, people can really connect with that.
I think the lyrics definitely can make a huge influence, but also the feeling of the music itself.
I think absolutely. I think the music
the whole
really
thing
is important.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in the Scottish choir, I found it always amazing that you would sing something that no one could understand, and people would come up to you afterwards and say, "Oh my God, I had this vision of this," and they'd be tears rolling down their faces and made me think of my grandmother, and you go, "How did you get all out of a song that words you don't understand?" So I think that there's something incredibly powerful in that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be spelled out in the lyrics, but I can't help myself. The lyrics are always important too.
Well, I think that's the power of story, is that it doesn't have to have words. It's the feeling that we're transmitting is what the audience receives as well.
Well, I when we watched your show, I watched your show yesterday, and you were doing so much just with a gesture. And I again, that's the audience making that imagination connection, that you don't necessarily always need words. You can use something else that is possibly more powerful in that moment.
Imagination.
We're making them use their imagination, and they are going, oh, I feel that. And sometimes words can't get that from them, but a piece of music or a gesture or a facial expression can.
And tone of voice and the modulation in voice and stuff. This has been a great pleasure talking to you today.
It's been lovely talking to you.
Yeah. So where can people find you if they want to find out more about you?
Well, I'm with the Great Southern Storytellers down in Denmark, so contact them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really had a great time.
Thank you, Ali.
If you've enjoyed the podcast and would like to support me to continue the work that I'm doing, please head to buymeacoffee.com/Alyssa Curtain and make a donation or sign up for a subscription. This is a passion project, and as such, it is voluntary. So your donations make it easier for me to continue this work. Thank you for your support. Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.